Welcome to the Pub Date Podcast, the show where two book broads discuss what should happen before, during, and after your book publication date. Brought to you by Broad Book Group, with your hosts Vanessa Campos and Jen Dorsey.
Hello. Happy Friday. Vanessa, how are you today?
I am so excited it's Friday and I get to talk to one of my favorite people in publishing, Jen.
Me too. We're so lucky.
I know. If only everybody else could be as lucky, but that's why we have a podcast.
That's right. It's really our excuse to get together and chat and get super nerdy about books, which I'm always excited about. Always.
Absolutely.
So let's do that today, shall we? I want to kick it off and talk a little bit about just sort of some big picture things. So let me kind of set the stage here. I had a really great conversation with the National Speakers Association this past week, and we talked a little bit about publishing and what the options are, and whether people want to go into traditional publishing or hybrid or self-publishing. There's an entire ecosystem out there, as we very well know, because we're both involved in kind of all those aspects of the ecosystem. So I thought maybe today we would break it down for our listeners and talk a little bit about the difference between traditional and indie publishing and how they can differ just from like the nuts and bolts aspect of it. What do you think?
Yeah, let's break it down for the people. So
let's break it down.
One of the things that I've noticed, so we've both worked in, with traditional publishers and independently published authors. And the difference is to me, and let me know what you think here. The difference is to me is distribution and how you go about it. So when you go through a traditional publisher, they manage all those things. They're doing all the behind the scenes. They're pulling the levers to make sure that your book is in a season, it's in a category, it's got the right metadata, it's got the right comp titles. All of these things are happening while the author is basically going about their business and doing their editing and getting the cover and marketing it and doing author stuff, all the fun stuff.
Right. So
what happens when you decide, traditional publishing isn't for me for whatever reason. So if you're a business owner and you have, this great thing that you really want to get to the market sooner rather than later, that's one of the big issues is timelines with distribution, traditional distribution. You want to get a book out there in the next 6 months, you're probably not going to find a publisher that's willing to take you.
Right. No.
So that's, you're like, no, because, right now in traditional publishing, if you walk up to a Wiley or a HarperCollins, what season are they acquiring right now, Jen?
Oh my gosh. Well, people who are signing books for traditional houses are already working well into mid 2022 and beyond. So it's at least a solid year plus out if you're looking at a very traditional publisher. Now, there are some that are very nimble, and you'll see books that kind of pop into the ecosystem that are incredibly timely. One example of that might be when the Mueller report came out. They published that very quickly, and many people did, but they kind of knew it was coming, so they were ready to rock and roll. But yeah, I think that, there's just so much that goes on behind the scenes of publishing a book that most people do not realize, which is fine. Not everyone knows everything about every business, right? But I think that there's a real education gap there for authors when they kind of come in very doe-eyed and they want their book to come out right away. They don't understand what all has to happen. And so with traditional, that is definitely a piece of the puzzle. And I think too, we should think about distribution and what exactly that means. Not everyone might understand what all is involved there. And you mentioned it. You distribution is not only getting your book in front of people on Amazon and on IndieBound and on Bookshop, but it's getting it into physical stores. It's the warehousing piece of it. It's the whole supply chain economics piece of it. There's just a lot there to unpack.
Right. So with traditional distribution models, what happens is your book gets entered into a season in a catalog for your publisher. And then a part of the distribution is this entire team that works behind the scenes to sell your book to the retailers. And those people who buy the books for the Barnes and Noble, they look at the region. There's so much data behind that. So book publishing has been around forever. Nielsen Bookscan delivers all the data behind your book to be able to know where your book specifically will perform the best. Now, all of that could be a complete, like, we could spend a year talking about that. But how do we put that into perspective for an author, a business book author who needs to get their book out in the next 6 months, 3 months, who already has gone through the editorial process? So you have to start thinking about what are the key things that you as an author need to accomplish, and what does this book need to do for you? So in terms of distribution, if you're going at this yourself, you should consider, how quickly you need to get it to market, aka at the retailer pages. So when you go to Amazon and your book populates on there, do you need it to be an ebook only? Do you need it to be a paperback? Do you want to house inventory? Do you want it to be print on demand? Those are all the things that you need to consider. And I would recommend looking at this as a business unit. How does this business, because your book is a product, how does it tie into your current business model? So for example, let's say you're an author and you have a big conference that you're speaking about at the beginning of the year. So we're in May. Let's say, you've got some time to write the book. So you've got about 3 months to write the book, 3 months to edit the book, and then the rest of the year to really dig in and do the marketing. That doesn't leave you a lot of time for distribution management, metadata, and all the things. So for the purpose of this conversation, let's take a look at the difference between Amazon's KDP and Ingram Spark, which are two of the bigger names. I know that there's BookBaby and a bunch of other smaller distribution channels that you could go through, but let's talk KDP and Ingram Spark. Let's go through the pros and cons.
Let's do, because they mystify me a little bit, and I've been in publishing for 25 years, so I should not be mystified, but yet they seem mysterious. So unpack it for me.
All right, so let's talk distribution. So with KDP, it's limited distribution, but it's pretty quick and immediate. So if you need to get an ebook out there right now because you want to start collecting some customers, get your name out there as a published author, KDP is the way to go. The threshold to actually get into publishing through KDP is low. The cost is low, and you're able to go ahead and upload files pretty quickly. They are very distributed in that when you upload a KDP file, it's only going to be for Kindle. It's going to be a Kindle app. Right. It's going to be for your Kindle Paperwhite. It's very limited, but that's okay for some people. And then you have Ingram Spark, which is a wider distribution. It's as close, in my opinion, it's as close as you're going to get to being almost fully distributed. And it's a wider distribution in that they release your metadata and they make it very simple for you to go through their process and include all the keywords, the tags that you think are going to be important for your book. And they distribute it out to almost all the major retailers. So we're talking Barnes and Noble, IndieBound, Bookshop, Amazon. So all of those retailers will get it. It will be limited in that it's digital distribution, so your book will appear, but it won't appear at the physical bookstores.
Got it. Really quick, I'm going to stop you for just a second. Can you define, or at least we should define, what metadata means for our readers, or our readers? I'm such a book person. For our listeners, because they may not know what the word metadata means. You and I know, but let's fill them in real quick.
Metadata is all the things that, I guess the closest thing that I could describe it to is SEO. So metadata includes your title and your keywords, your description, the categories that you want your book to appear at the distribution level. So when the books are at Amazon, those categories and where it appears, you enter those in. And, BISAC codes, those are for bookstores if your book gets into it, but libraries as well.
Right. And a BISAC code is, for those who do not know, is basically a categorization for your book. And books can have multiple BISAC codes. And there are, I don't even want to think about how many there are. I think there are thousands.
Yes.
It can range from, let's use like a small business book as an example. Business would be the main BISAC category. And then it would drill down into what that book is about. So if it's a book about franchising, franchise will be a BISAC category. If it's specifically about maybe an e-commerce business, that will be
Mhm.
a BISAC category. So your book can have more than one, and honestly, the more the merrier, right? Because it just gets you more visibility.
Absolutely. I would recommend 3 to 5 BISAC categories, and I would try to stay away from the general categories. So if you can drill down
Yeah.
to a few, so it's business, it's usually business and economics, and then you get into entrepreneurship, and then you drill down further. So I would always recommend going as niche as possible. Remember, riches and niches, right? So
Right.
the next thing that I would say is, in terms of deciding whether or not you want to do a KDP or an Ingram Spark model, is pre-orders. How important are pre-orders to you? So with KDP, Amazon, what they do in pre-order world, which is making your book available for sales prior to the book's release date. So let's say we're aiming for a September 21st release date. What you can do is you can make your ebook available for pre-order 3 months prior, 90 days. The issue I have with that is that you can't make your physical copy of your book available for pre-order. Why? I have no idea. I don't know why they do it. It's bizarre.
It is, because traditional publishers can.
Yes.
Right.
And that
Hmm.
goes into whether or not you're going to go with KDP or where you're going to go with Ingram Spark. Ingram Spark follows a more traditional
Mhm.
publishing model. So it does take a little bit longer to get your books up and ready and your book pages ready at the retailers. However, they do allow you to do pre-order sales for physical and ebooks. So it all really depends on what your marketing strategy is. Do you need to get, your ebook
Right.
content out immediately? Then you have, Amazon KDP for that. And it, like I said, going back to price point, I do want to, remind people that Amazon does make it very inexpensive to get your book to your consumers quickly. Amazon or Ingram Spark is a little bit more, but that's because, there's more distribution channels that they reach out to, more retailers that they reach out to. So that's one thing.
Right. That's true. Uh, on the print side, so for Ingram Spark, how does that work on the print side? Do they actually warehouse books for you, or is it all print on demand where when an order comes in, they print a book and they send it out?
They do print on demand. So Ingram Spark
Okay.
works with Lightning Source. That's their print arm of the business. And you upload your pages, your PDF, your print ready pages, and it's really easy. You submit it. They go through a process. It does take a little bit longer than you would expect, especially with a KDP, but they'll send you soft proofs. You'll be able to see soft proofs on KDP as well, and you can order a sample print book on both platforms. So that's available on both. And it's really good to have print on demand, because then that way you're not stuck with warehousing fees and figuring out where you're going to warehouse the books. And it's easier that way, especially if you're going at this alone. I would recommend print on demand.
Yeah, absolutely. And soft proofs, for those of you who are uninitiated, just basically means you get a PDF of the book and you get to look through it and make sure that it looks good to you on screen. You catch any typos or boo-boos or anything funky that might have happened in the conversion process.
Yes, and I'm glad you bring that up. So that's another part of the production process that a publisher goes through is we get the soft proofs, we take a look at them, and then if there's an issue, we work with the printer to upload new files. Now, to upload new files on your own as an independent publisher, an independent author, you will incur a fee essentially with Ingram Spark. And that's because they've gone through the process of, taking your PDF file and making it print ready. I don't believe that there is a fee if you need to make changes to your ebook on KDP. So going back, they're very much a digital first platform, just to make sure that, changes like this are easy. There's, more things that they can move quicker with. So that's another benefit, a pro and con there. Okay, so going back to that, and going through the process. So we're talking about print. I recommend POD all the way. But the ebook conversion is another big step that as a traditional published author, you usually don't have to think about. But when you are publishing yourself, you're going to have to figure out, do I want to go through the process of doing an ebook conversion that is going to create an EPUB, which is a file that all the platforms, so you're thinking iBooks, Google Play, Nook, and Kindle can read? Or do I want to limit it and get it to the market sooner and actually just do a Mobi file and go through Amazon's process? So there's, whether or not you want to make your ebook available to everyone, or just, you have a purpose for this. So it needs to go out to Amazon immediately. In terms of timeline, that is something to consider. So with Ingram Spark, it takes about 3 weeks, but that's because there's a lot of moving pieces that even I don't understand when it comes to book conversion. With KDP, they have a system that you can create your own ebook, and that spits out a Mobi file and it's ready to go. Not my favorite because it looks less like the print book, but again, it goes back to what is your timeline and what are your sales goals for this book?
Right. I think that's a really important thing to consider, because when you sit down and you write a book and you're getting ready to kind of visualize what that looks like, a lot of authors, at least in my experience, don't always think about the long tail process that's involved with the marketing. So you and I both know very well that marketing has to be in your mind from day one.
Yes.
And sadly, I think a lot of people lose their romantic notion of what writing is and what publishing is when they realize that. But like you said earlier, it is a business. We're not in it just because we love books. I mean, we do. We love books, but everybody has to make a living, including independent publishers and authors. So you've got to be thinking long-term about what the marketing ramifications are when you not only decide how you're going to do your book, what it's about, what the table of contents looks like, but also this piece that you're talking about today. What does the distribution part look like?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up, the marketing piece, because this goes back to, and I keep doing, for those of you who can't see me, I'm gesturing, going back to distribution, and whether or not you need to implement these type of tools. So the nice thing about Ingram is that you'll be able to do a lot of pricing strategy on demand. You'll be able to go ahead, and if you want to lower your price point on your book, your physical book, you can do so. Your ebook, you can do so on their back end. They make it really easy to do that. Ingram Spark also has a really great e-commerce platform where you can basically go ahead and create a store, and we can link out to this later. So you're able, as an independent author, you're able to go ahead and create a store. And this store, you can add in your ISBN number for your ebook and your print book. And what it does is that it allows you to sell direct to your customers, and on your website, create this little portal for you. So it's you can brand it to your business's name, and on the back end of that Aereo page where you go ahead and set yourself up, you're able to down price it exclusive to your store, exclusive to your audience, and exclusive to any kind of price promotions that you want to do. If you want to down price it using a code for your newsletter, that's amazing. That's not something that you can do when you are just selling through the distribution channels. Now, looking at KDP, they have their own set of things that you can do. So you can do a KDP 90-day down price for, let me take it back. It's actually a Kindle unlimited 90-day. And what that does is that it basically locks in your ebook. So you have to make your ebook exclusive to Amazon in order to take advantage of their price promotion strategies and marketing tools. So that limits you if you have people who want your book on Nook. who want your book on Google Play, who want your book on iBooks. But when you do that, in those 90 days, you get the chance to down price your book. You get a chance to go ahead and do a lot of different promotion strategies, like nominate your book for certain things. There are co-op strategies. And if you are Amazon keyword familiar and advertising savvy, then that may be the right path for you. If you're not and you want to control more of that, then I suggest going through Ingram Spark and really taking advantage of their marketing tools, because they make you not just the publisher, but also the retailer. And I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, that's more money in your pocket as author / publisher, right?
Correct. And that leads us into royalties. So through
Ooh, my
I know,
favorite.
royalties, the thing that everyone is talking about. And I have 1.5 million thoughts from a traditional perspective and an indie perspective, but for the purpose of this conversation, KDP gives you a pretty okay, royalty split. They have rules on whether or not it's a paperback, it's an ebook, whether or not you are part of Kindle Unlimited. So if you make your book exclusive to them, then they give you a higher royalty, which is great. But then you look at Ingram. So through Ingram Spark, you get a little bit more of a taste of what that looks like from a traditional model. But then the really nice thing about it is that when you are going through their Aereo process and the ebook, their ebook platform, you get a higher royalty on those direct to consumer sales, because they are basically taking the middleman out. And I think that that's really wonderful thing that they have made available to independent bookstores and independent authors. So always look at royalties and do the math, before you decide KDP versus Ingram Spark.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we tend to think of royalties in the traditional sense if you're going with a traditional publisher, and that's very much a part of the experience there. But someone else has to think about all these things that you and I have talked about today. And, the this royalty structure is just very different from publisher to publisher, depending on the size. And at the end of the day, I think, honestly, there may be more money in your pocket this way. Now, granted, you may not have that vast, wide distribution network that a traditional publisher has, but in the long run, like you said, you control the process, you control the IP, and it's really your show, which I think is great.
Absolutely. And I think more and more authors are realizing that this is the way to go, especially ones that are keen on selling, that already have an audience. So, it's one of those things that you really need to consider. And the good thing is that we're here for you as Broad Book Group.
That's right.
We'll
hold your hand. We'll do it with you. Why not? Right?
It's what we love to do. And you're always welcome to send us questions, DM us, reach out to us at our website, www.broadbookgroup.com, and on social media at Broad Book Group. We're more than happy to answer questions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's what we've got time for today, ma'am. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks to our producer, Paul Roberts. Thanks to our executive producer, Emily Carpenter-Pulskamp of Little Red Communications. And we will see you all next time in the stacks. Have a good one.
See ya.
We hope that you gained some valuable insights into the world of book publishing. Head over to broadbookgroup.com to learn more about us and all our services. And be sure to check out all our social media at Broad Book Group. Until then, keep publishing.